So we thank him lovingly. And that's good. And so we'll continue as best we can, under the circumstances. Because what we preach always is Jesus and him crucified. To the Greeks it was a stumbling block, and to the Jews it was foolishness. But to you it is the very power of God. And so we have to then change the way we're living, and especially then we have to pray for the church that it can change its way of living. Why? Why do we have to pray for the church? Because you see, if we really look at the whole history of the church, it runs like this. It runs like a giant football team. Up and down and up and down. And there's always the dying and the rising. Yeah. How many of you remember the Biafran War in Nigeria in the late 60s, the beginning of the 70s? Okay. What happened then was that there was a Catholic section, the most strong Catholic section in the whole of Africa. It was Igbo land, or Biafra. And they were rebelling against them, the rest of the Muslim country in Nigeria, and there was a war going on. And as a result of the war, some 200 to 300 to 400 missionaries, I don't have the exact count, who were with the Igbos, or the Catholic population, were put out completely. And it looked then to the world and to the church that this great mission church was in Africa was going to die. Because all of these missionaries were gone. Hundreds upon hundreds were gone, and they could never return to Nigeria. Well, did it? No. They started their own seminaries for the first time. And their seminaries are overflowing. And we in this tiny little place, we've been blessed with 3, 4, sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8 of these young priests sitting on our stoops and laughing and being so joyful and so wonderful. And they've been here because, in a sense, the church had to act and react to something that was happening. And now then the church is the glory. It's the glory of the whole world. And it's sending missionaries into Africa and even into Brownsville, Texas. Missionaries from Africa coming back over here to share the Word of God. So we just have to see it. And as Western culture erodes from the Christian base that saved it, because it truly did, Christianity saved Western civilization. Nothing else did. Only Christianity. And as a result, then in time, it's eroded. So that people would say that Europe is only a veneer of Christianity. And so then we have to then see that we too are being eroded. And why are we being eroded? We're being eroded because the leadership of the church isn't Christ-like. There's no other possible answer. When it is, you'll see them change. And when it isn't, who gives a damn, they're going to say. And what we have to see is that Jesus gives this damn, and that he would die for us again. He would. And so then it becomes then for us then a question of tonight, are you this Jesus? Are you he who is to come? Not so much for you. You're good people, and we're glad you're here. But for this guy, and for those guys, and for those kids, are you Jesus, he who is to come? And the answer is, you bet your life. And when you find somebody who's this image of Christ, you're going to be here. And they're going to be here. Because there's something so wonderful in that, and so present, and so loving, that it's going to pull them from this secular world right into his arms. And so don't be afraid, and especially for them. Don't be afraid. Yeah, this little church may close, and it may be tough for you to find where then this image of Christ is, but then you got to look. It'll be there. I tell you it will, because God has told me. And he said, tell them that I'm not forgetting them. Telling them that when it's hard, I'll be there. Tell them that I love them. Everybody needs that. And everybody will live on it. And so here we are this night, and we're sort of commemorating the fact that together, you and I, did you know that? Yeah, together we found God. It's Jesus. And he gives us the same answer. The same answer. He gives us gifts, and he gives us power, and he gives us forgiveness, and he gives all of us hope that we can live in this world until we come to the next. And the next is where we'll see his glory. Glory is a funny word. I don't even know what it means. But I know what it means when you love your kids. I know that. And I know what it means when you know that you're loved by God. It's the same thing. Same thing. Always there, always caring, always loving. So I thank you for these many years. They seem like a day. Does anybody remember the story about Jacob and Esau? It's a long story, so you don't want to hear it tonight. But you're going to. Anyway, here's a story about Jacob. He deceived his brother and he got his father's blessing. And when the brother came back, he said, give me the blessing. And the brother was much stronger than he was. And so he took off and he fled 400 miles and he went up to where his mother used to live. And his mother's brother, an uncle, I guess, was a crook. And so he said, yeah, you can stay here, but you got to work 7 years for me. He said, well, on the way up I saw this beautiful girl, I'd like to marry her. And he said, okay, 7 years. So he worked 7 years and he came to the night of the marriage, and he came in and the girl was veiled. And they took off the veil after the marriage ceremony, and it wasn't the one he saw. And he said to the father, what the heck is this? And he said, that's the custom here. The oldest girl has to marry first. You want to marry the other girl, you got to work 7 more years. But the years seemed like a day because he loved her much. Isn't that great?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I guess I never loved that.
When I came here, this was a very quiet church. And now then the pews talk back. That's wonderful. It's so wonderful. Because the Spirit of God is living with you. And because we have to find this God in one another. He remains hidden. And through faith, we'll find it. And then our children will be able to grow like Jesus in wisdom and age and grace before God and the world. And we'll be so pleased. So very pleased. Okay. Anybody have anything they'd like to share?